we can personalize to the person, not personalize on the campaign.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Quickfire Marketing. I'm your host, E.T. Mac. I have an amazing guest today, one of the pioneers of the next generation of sales technology, Ben Cheung, co-founder of CloseFactor, go-to-market machine, and fellow foodie. What's up, Ben? How you doing?
All right. Thanks for inviting me, ET.
Yeah. So CloseFactor is doing great things, but we can talk about that later. I wanted to focus on personalization, right? When it comes down to it, there's a lot of ways to approach it. More often than not, it seems like people suffer from analysis paralysis. So I wanted you to share some insights about how to navigate through it.
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of changes in the market that really impacts how we go to market nowadays. For example, outbounding through email is worn out, and there are more strict rules from email providers in terms of what you can and cannot send. GDPR, all these things are
Mhm.
really changing the game in the last 5 to 10 years, quite honestly. So we really need to adapt very differently. Like you said, a lot of times what people do when they say like, oh my God, there are all these different requirements and there are all these different concerns, they've started having the analysis paralysis. Say, I can't go left, I can't go right, I can't go straight, I can't go backward, I'm stuck. So it really takes a lot of diligence, also think out of the box nowadays to be able to, actually execute some effective campaigns.
Yeah. And then what are some techniques you recommend? Because that's kind of what you focus on a day to day. Like when you run into people that keep having you reiterate the list, reiterate the list, reiterate the list, like
Mhm.
how do you help them draw the line and stay focused?
One thing that I would suggest, this is probably more for smaller, medium size, or pre-IPO or just post-IPO kind of companies. My advice always been to just start with the most core set of audience because that way it's easy to grok. Traditionally, let's say you look at 5 to 10 years before, marketing people seem to say like, I want to stuff the funnel. I want to just spray as many
Mm-hmm.
people as possible and then get them in the door. And then look what it got us to, like all these problems that occur as a result of it. What I would recommend to customers say start with the most core set of audience, then select them, then start doing experiments with what you think is the best and see the results. That would be one advice that we give to people.
So something I've been seeing and something I've been hearing is the tech world has kind of been in a roller coaster for the last 2 years. We're getting to the end of Q1 if you're on calendar year, and there are still companies out there that are a little lost. Maybe they were resource strapped going Q4 into Q1, and now their pipeline isn't where it needs to be. So even focusing on their core, they probably have to do more to make up the gap. What do
Mhm.
they do then if they're still trying to personalize?
That's a real tough problem. I would still give the same advice is that, like, in this kind of constrained environment, it's more important than ever to be more conscientious in terms of your spend to the core of what your audience without the analysis paralysis that you're talking about. And a lot of times, I think that from my experience, people kind of know the smaller core set that they're looking for very clearly. Is that once they start expanding out to the second or third ring of people that they want to influence, then it
Mhm.
gets a lot of unknowns and a lot of analysis paralysis occur. So my recommendation is really, like I mentioned before, just bias for action. Start with the core. You're not gonna get the end with a small spend with the core smaller set audience, and then experiment with it, and then add a little bit and experiment, add a little bit. That's one key thing that I would say. That way, kind of get you going already. Second thing I find other people do, I think is a completely not the right approach, is that they think about each interaction as unique on its own. For example, I talked to ET the first time, I talked to ET the second time, I talked to ET the third time, or influence ET the third time. I treat each time as completely unique and not related. What I would suggest is that think about personalization as like a multi-step process of how you engage with a target role or a target contact. I know that like a lot of BDR teams are already doing that with the sequences that they play,
Mhm.
but what are the means that we can do that on the marketing side, right? On the top of funnel side, what are the ways that we can engage through social media or some other mean like across multiple channels with the same audience, and we can personalize to the person, not personalize on the campaign.
Do you have an example of that, like a vision in your head of how that would play out?
It all starts with the core audience, a list of core people, like I mentioned, and you can expand that core so people do experimentation. But once you have that core audience, do some more bucketization for them in terms of their roles, and then think about the different channels that you want to play in terms of interacting with them, and think about different messaging that you want to get at the sequences of those messagings, and think about what are the strengths or weaknesses of the different channels for the different messages. I know that with all these said, it sounded like, hey, isn't that a lot of analysis to do, Ben, to figuring this out? Yes, but what I'm saying is that you don't have to do it everything up front before you start something. Because a lot of time the answers for like these questions about what's the right messaging, what's the right sequence, what's the right channel, you do it through experimentation to find out where it's most effective. There's not an intellectual answer for this a lot of times.
Yeah, so a big show for us coming up in the tech space is RSA, big security show, right, in the Bay Area. So if I was going to start a personalization campaign from marketing, what are some steps I could take? Let's just say application security, bigger shift there, right? Everyone's going to code. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to focus on these things. So I'm going to look at my application security engineers, my director of InfoSec, and my CISOs. And then the messaging is going out to them. You would tailor it from the start at the social media, or how would we walk through this?
As you go deeper, it's not just one single role. There are multiple roles. People call themselves product security, just slight variants on app security. And then there are some people focus on API security. There's slight variants of that, but these are all related. It's speaking from a role as marketeers. It's good to speak to the sales engineers within your team to kind of understand the nuances between the different ones. Then that helps you to classify them more concretely. And my company, CloseFactor, actually also help you to classify people based on these slight nuances, which is important. There are a lot of toolings out there already help you to do that. First of all, you want to be able to separate the different audiences. Then think about how to engage with them on social media like LinkedIn, even before the show.
Mhm.
You don't know who is exactly is going, who's not going, but it's good to interact with different people within those roles. And application security is not a huge base, not a huge number of roles that you have to interact with. And keep in mind that people talk to each other. Even if there's somebody like Ben is not going, but Ben's colleague is going, and if they see something interesting, they might mention to their colleague and say, "Hey, when you go, you might want to check this out." My biggest advice for people in this kind of uncertain environments is don't go with the notion that I'm going to go in with everything figured out. You might have to tell your boss that, but the truth is that the rug can be pulled from underneath you very dramatically because the market could change so much in the future with all this uncertainty ahead. So take whatever plan that you have with a grain of salt and just be mindful about quickly adjust as you see things change.
No, 100%. I think sometimes when people run into challenges like this, these times where they lose sight of their common goals that you're talking about or their
Hmm.
core goals, and they start
Hmm.
grasping at straws and we do things out of character and then we stray from the path, right? But
Hmm.
personalization, you got to do what's right for you, just like the
Hmm.
messaging needs to be right for that specific person. So totally agree on
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
All right. Well, Ben, thank you so much for hopping on with us. It was great getting your insights on personalization. You can find Ben on LinkedIn and his company CloseFactor as well. And you can find us wherever podcasts are found. Any last words, Ben?
No, thank you for having me. Really fun to to get on to have this chat with my friend and my business associate.
Yeah, 100%. Love it. Thanks, Ben. So, fun scenario because you're a personalization guru in my eyes. If we were going to go out to a Taiwanese restaurant, how would you personalize the menu for me?
I mean, for me, one of the very common Taiwanese food is beef noodle soup, right? As an introduction for the person that never had that much experience with Chinese food, beef noodle soup is a good intro. But for the people that are hardcore, like yourself, telling ET to eat beef noodle soup is kind of like grabbing a menu from McDonald's. So I gotta find something really hardcore for people like ET.
Yeah, we got to go eat. I'm hungry now. It's almost lunch.
Getting hungry.
All right. It's always almost lunchtime for me.